G'day Eagles fans, welcome back to True Eagle. Today I thought I would do a video almost doing like a bit of a stock take of where we're at in terms of trade and free agency and drafting. We've got a fair bit going on this year. I've made videos throughout the year, but it's been a few weeks since I've last done one. And there's just a fair bit going on, and in a good way, I suppose, because we actually have a lot of picks to play with, etc. So we're just going to talk about all the current stories at the moment associated with the West Coast Eagles and trade and draft, etc. All drafts are important, but I suppose this one feels particularly important because of the amount of ammunition we have this year. I mean, we traded away Tom Barras for 3 picks from Hawthorn last year. And, we haven't even seen the fruits of that yet, and we could even have more picks. So from that point of view, it feels quite pivotal what we do this year, and obviously in the context of the worst season this club has ever had from a win-loss point of view. Unless we jag a win or two in the final couple of rounds, which still doesn't seem likely. So we'll start with the obvious and the oldest news, Oscar Allen. I suppose the only update there is I've seen a few posts suggesting that this is a done deal, basically, to the Brisbane Lions. And I saw that coming for a while. I'm sure we all did. I didn't think, there's been almost no discussion about whether Oscar Allen would stay. I think it's almost been more like, is Brisbane still going to be interested? At this stage, it sounds like, after round 24, he's going to finish up at West Coast and join the Brisbane Lions. I still have mixed feelings about this. I've said from the beginning that I felt like this was clearly West Coast driven, and everything we've heard reported about it seems to support that idea, that West Coast is more or less, looking at the cost benefit of signing Oscar Allen to a long-term deal. Obviously his body isn't in great shape, and we're probably a year removed from some good form. I think he played all right last year, and the year before that he was very, very good. But at the same time, this is our club captain, and I just feel a little bit uncomfortable about it. I guess one thing I do sometimes is when, over the last few years when West Coast has sucked, I think to myself, what would Geelong or Hawthorn or Sydney do if they're in our position? Would they push out their club captain to get pick 2 in the draft? It doesn't feel like they would. But then again, it's also hard to imagine any of those clubs being in the position we are in right now, right? So we're already there, and therefore it's a little bit hard to extrapolate or project what Geelong would do in this scenario. As an example, I just think they're a very well-run club, and certainly a club that someone like us can aspire to try and be, or emulate rather. But having said all that, I mean, from a value point of view, you can't argue that pick 2 isn't more valuable than Oscar Allen right now. And I think in a trade sense, if this was a trade scenario, we know that Oscar Allen wouldn't get traded for pick 2. So we're trying to benefit from the system, and I understand that. But at the same time, it just feels a little bit sad that the club captain who grew up supporting West Coast and presumably wants to be here, I mean, there's reports he doesn't even have a contract from off a West Coast in front of him right now. That's confusing because I think at the start of the year there were short-term deals on lower money for Oscar Allen. So perhaps he's come back with a rebuttal and we haven't even sent one back. I don't know. But either way, the update there is that it seems likely he's going to go. And some chattering, yes, we'll go with that word, around Liam Ryan. Again, this one's hard to read because it's happened a few off seasons in a row, the idea that Liam Ryan might head to Victoria, and there may be some family or personal reasons rather why that may be the case. I think I have decided that I would hate to lose Liam Ryan. I think that the cost of or the price that we'd be able to set on a contracted Liam Ryan would still be fairly modest. Like I think the value that he brings to us as being one of the most skillful players, if not the most skillful player on our list, and a genuine mentor there, particularly for the Indigenous players that we have on our list, but not limited to. I mean, I think he's pretty close with Harley Reid, for instance. I think there is some intangible loss there in addition to the player he is on field, which, he's been a reliable contributor for us. But he's not an elite player anymore. So I think it'll be a blow, but I think the fact of the matter is here with Liam Ryan, we are kind of beholden to what he wants. Maybe not in a literal sense. Like West Coast could hold him to that contract, but it just doesn't seem like that's what clubs do these days if a player really wants to get out. So we'll see. Like I said, we've heard about this in a few off seasons in a row, I reckon, and there's some suggestion he doesn't want to leave WA. So who knows? But I am hoping that one doesn't eventuate and we keep Liam Ryan on our list. I don't think the price that we would be able to set or what value we would get back would quite equate to the loss of Liam Ryan. As far as potential outgoings go, that's about it, other than Harley Reid. Now, I'm a little bit sick of the Harley Reid speculation. Not because I think there's nothing there. I think it's fine to speculate on it until it's a signed deal. It does seem like he's pretty close to signing with West Coast. I don't know how true that is, or what can happen between now and October for that to change. But I suppose the most likely scenario is if he doesn't re-sign this year, it's been reported that he will leave, if that makes sense. So he won't go into next year without a contract past that. That means the decision is coming this year imminently. He either goes or he stays, and it seems more likely to stay. I personally have a bit of fatigue about speculating about it. We've done that a fair bit on this channel. I'm hoping he stays, to put it simply. Now, in terms of what we might bring in this year, we've talked about the draft and how many good picks we have, and that's obviously a great position to be in. It's an important draft, but at the same time, I've sort of relaxed a little bit about thinking too deeply about the prospects we might actually pick up as it currently stands for the time being, because there's so much water to go under the bridge between now and then, and we don't know if we're going to hold picks 1 and 2, if we're going to trade one, if we're going to trade both, and maybe enter the draft, hopefully around 4 or 5 at the latest. So therefore, I think it's much more pertinent to talk about what we might do in the trade scenario here, because that will impact everything else. And there's also the big variable here as well, list spots, right? So if we're able to manufacture or generate from the AFL a couple of extra list spots and some help with their academy picks, I think that would be a huge benefit to us via some sort of assistance package without disadvantaging the rest of the league. This is something I've said in previous videos on this channel and True Footy as well. So I think West Coast have submitted some sort of application for a priority assistance, we don't know the details yet, but I think Lockie Reed might have reported it, that it is likely to be around list spots and NGAs. So that is also important because it does have a flow-on effect as to what decisions we make. So first of all, we'll talk about the one that I haven't discussed on this channel specifically, and that is the suggestion that Mitch Duncan might head to the West Coast Eagles next season. So Mitch Duncan was 2009 draft, West Australian, had a great career at Geelong and has been an amazing player for them, but I think would be 34 right now, turning 35 next year, assuming he was 18 when he was drafted. So well and truly over the hill, with all due respect, to a very, very good player. And this one would very much be from the point of view of him transitioning into a coaching career, as we did with Sam Mitchell, which obviously had some great success before he went back to Victoria, before that contract ended. Who cares, we won a flag, it doesn't matter. So I think the benefit to us here, I think, would be largely intangible of having a player from a culture like Geelong, from a playing system like Geelong, to come in and have an impact in a landscape at West Coast where there isn't a lot of quality, or at least a well-known coaches. I'll say that because I feel disrespectful saying that. I don't know them from a bar of soap. But I think one thing that has been missed a lot this year, particularly in the media, and maybe I haven't mentioned it enough, is that we're still paying Adam Simpson. So all of our spending includes Adam Simpson under our soft cap, which was a big topic when we actually sacked him. So I don't know if this is necessarily the case, but it felt like West Coast didn't go hard enough, I suppose, at recruiting quality or established assistant coaches, let's put it that way, which, I think Simo, when he came over and coached us in the end of 2013, he brought a lot of his guys over. And, someone like a Marco Bello I'd never heard of before I saw that he had signed with West Coast. So that, as a side note, will be interesting to see what we do there. But someone like a Mitch Duncan could transition into that sort of role at West Coast. Now, there's a few different ways that gets done. It could be a trade for virtually nothing. We could sign him as a delisted free agent. I suppose that's possible too. That's also, whether that's a yes or a no, it's actually not completely binary for me right now. Because I don't think there's too much downside of getting Mitch Duncan. But if we don't have any extra list spots, it does become a little bit more of a toss-up, because the opportunity cost becomes, is it a choice between Mitch Duncan and, say, give it another year to Campbell Chesser? Like, whatever you think of Chesser, there's obviously higher potential for him to contribute past 1 year than a Mitch Duncan, I would have thought. Does it, what about Tom Cole? He's still out of contract. So these are the other trade-offs that you'd make with Mitch Duncan, but in an ideal world, I would love us to have enough list spots to make this work, because even if he doesn't play a full season, if he plays in the waffle full time, like if we signed him to our Beagles, as we call them on Big Footy, the B-Eagles, if we signed him there and he just was a playing coach for them, or playing assistant coach at West Coast generally, I think we'd be silly not to consider this strongly. But again, it comes down to whether we have an extra list spot or two to play with. Ideally, like 2 extra list spots would be great, and we can make this work, because I do think we're lacking leadership. We're certainly lacking experience from successful systems. We've got a few players, but not many. Other ones we talked about, Judd McVie. I'm still hopeful this happens, because I think he's a young, talented West Australian talent, albeit he doesn't really, at this stage, seem like the sort of player who feels a need for us. And there's also Brandon Starcevic to consider. So at the moment, Judd McVie I would describe as a small to medium defender, who I think has ambitions to play a little bit higher up the ground. And it's a little bit ambiguous what that means. Does he mean when he wants to play as a midfielder? Or does he want to play as a dashing halfback, sort of like Ryan Marrick does for West Coast? Doesn't do a lot of defending, wants to impact the play up forward. Because that is a factor. It's harder to see where he slots into our team, but at the same time, probably too good to pass up, I think, from a talent point of view. However, I mean, I've said this recently, I think he's less likely to go to West Coast than either stay at the D's or Fremantle, but this is one that I really hope we keep our heads in the hunt for, because he is a good quality young player, and we need to get past this point where we're no chance to sign a player that Fremantle's competing for. We need to be able to lift our heads above the water from that point of view. Starcevic is an interesting one, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself. He is a free agent, small defender. Not too sure about him as a midfielder, but we know he's a good player. And while it's not a massive position of need, it is a good player in an age bracket that we need, who also comes from a successful system in the Brisbane Lions, and he was there throughout their rebuild, basically. So from that point of view, it's good, and he's a free agent. But I think I did say this, actually. If we sign him as a free agent, it will dilute the compensation for Oscar Allen. However, it's also true that if the Brisbane Lions sign Oscar Allen and lose Brandon Starcevic, they actually get nothing for Starcevic there. So it's a little bit of a stalemate there. Who has more to lose from that point of view? It's probably West Coast. Is there a way that we try and trade for Brandon Starcevic and not pay through the absolute nose for it? Could we get a discount for him because of this not unique, but unusual situation where we're both signing free agents from the other club? Yeah, we would like to consider that. But again, it comes down to, what can we do with our later picks? So Starcevic, I don't know, he'd cost a first round pick, I would have thought. I know there's concussion issues, but I'm just saying, like, what is he likely to cost? And I would have thought Hawthorn's pick is probably going to be the price. Maybe we could go with our own second rounder, but on the actual draft night, that's probably going to be in the 30s. And is it realistic to expect Brisbane to accept that? It could be because of this unusual situation, but it might not be enough. But I'm actually less phased about that, because then you consider what we can do from a pick swap point of view. We have picks 1 and 2 in this hypothetical situation with Oscar Allen leaving and generating pick 2. We might have suitors for those picks, and I know that not everyone agrees with this, but I personally am a little bit iffy about some of the top prospects that are sort of unanimously ranked high. So a Cooper Duff-Tytler, a Willem Dersma as being right for West Coast. So rather than, leap for players that are not considered picks 1 and 2 quality right now, I'm personally willing to trade down to 4, 5, 6, 7 if we get, more picks. Obviously, you don't just move down for no reason. So is there a scenario where Essendon really want Willem Dersma, or Gold Coast really want Cooper Duff-Tytler, and they've got to move ahead of an academy pick anyway? There's a chance we can exploit this situation, and we're not often in a position where we can do this because we haven't had strong draft picks, but I think Essendon they're going to have potentially 3 top 10 picks, I think, if Sam Draper generates band 1 compensation. Gold Coast have what is currently 8 and 11, I think, assuming Oscar Allen's pick drops down, I think. Either way, ballpark, if we can have a top 5 pick and then say like 4 picks in the top 12 and move some other picks around, like that is actually a really strong position to be in. And that could possibly also include adding Starcevic to our list and adding Mitch Duncan to our list as senior experience. Doesn't really address some of the clear list needs we have, and we need to also partially address that through the draft. But some of the more immediate ones are midfield depth. We just don't have enough midfielders by quantity on the list at the moment. Like the Waffle team has, no one in the Waffle team at the moment playing midfield, I think. I think Petruccelli's been playing, centre bounce. So that's a starting point for what we could trade in. We talked about our need for a ruck. We can rule out Darcy Cameron now. He's re-signed with Collingwood. And that's fine. There was pros and cons to that potential trade anyway. Angus Sheldrick also re-signed with Sydney. He was loosely considered a target for us. Another player I think we can rule out is Neil Erasmus from Fremantle. I've never seen West Coast and Fremantle trade. I don't think that's ever going to change, to be honest. If I had to throw out some shouts that I don't think we've been linked to at all, I have talked about Ned Moyle from the Gold Coast Suns, who is he's their backup ruck that plays VFL and just dominates. He's probably one of the best rucks of his type that's not in an established team or playing regular AFL footy rather. That he's probably the best that we could possibly go for, but I don't think he wants to leave Gold Coast. As to why that is, I don't know why when you've got Jared Witts there, but fair play to him. He wants to stay loyal. Ned Reeves at Hawthorn, like if there is a merry-go-round of rucks here, we could potentially end up with someone like that. Again, there's been no connection there. There's Pitney, but I mean if Carlton lose TDK, Pitney is probably not gettable. Max Noble from the Gold Coast Suns, formerly on Fremantle's rookie list. I thought, looks like a pretty good young ruck. Then he went to the Gold Coast Suns. I actually can't remember if he got injured. Let me know in the comments if you happen to know the answer to that. I have a feeling he did get injured, but surely on their rookie list would be gettable. Would he move back to Perth? We got to try. I think he could be a very good ruck. I think we could use both an established ruck and a developing ruck, to be honest. And I'm not really for going for Cooper Duff-Tytler like one of the first picks in the draft, but a developing ruck in general, and certainly a key defender, because we've lost Jeremy McGovern, and we're likely to delist Callum Jamieson. So that leaves us with Harry Edwards, Rhett Bazzo, Sandy Brock, and I suppose Ruben Jinby is kind of playing in that space at the moment, but I would still probably add one. We've talked about Jed Buslinger as a potential target over the last year or two. He's still contracted at the Dogs and sounds like he wants to stay. But absolutely, we should knock on that door again. And if not now, in 12 months, because he's a pretty good young key back that can't get a game at the Western Bulldogs and from Western Australia. Jacob Blight from Richmond. I've heard this suggested a lot. I don't know if there's any truth to the rumour West Coast is chasing him, but again, another West Australian key position defender who's pretty young at the Richmond Footy Club. Then you got a few like Will Phillips, Devon Robertson, James Tunstall, who can't quite crack games at their respective clubs. Yeah, they're a bit of a muchness. I think most of those guys would come in as depth and improve the Waffle team, but they're not players I necessarily get excited about. And tell you what, I think those were all great suggestions, but now Tom McCarthy is a midfielder. Would we bother with someone like a Dev Robertson? Maybe I've just contradicted myself, but it's loosely on the shopping list, but none of those players that I just said seem like must-haves to me. I would have gone for Sheldrick. I think those guys are a fair way back. So we have some list decisions to go between now and the draft, actually. We've lost McGovern and Sheed. That's confirmed. I think that we are also likely to delist Jack Petrocelli. That would be one of the biggest bombshells if at this point Petrocelli got another contract, because he's barely played at all this year. Jaden Hunt is an iffy one. I think he might come in this week. We've seen the extended bench, but Duggan's out. So is there a chance we see Jaden Hunt re-earn a contract? I just think it's a bit of a red flag for a player who's like 30 to be outside of this team right now in the Waffle, out of contract. So I think he's probably done his dash at West Coast. Callum Jamieson, just permanently injured. Nothing against his talent. He's decent. He's just never fit. I think he's been injured like 3 or 4 times this year. And then there's Locke Rawlinson on the rookie list, who will likely go, I would have thought. Played 1 game and only gotten close once since. He seems less likely. But then we got some interesting decisions on players who are out of contract that I'm not sure whether we should delist. So first of all, we'll go with Jamie Cripps. Again, I think it's been reported he's getting another deal. I'm not against it. Again, my main concern is list space. So hopefully this issue is resolved for us if we be able to, retain Jamie Cripps and get in Mitch Duncan. I mean, that's not an unfair priority assistance scenario, I don't think. Malachi Champion, still out of contract on the rookie list, but he's come into the extended bench this week. I think he's pretty safe, I would have thought. Campbell Chesser is winning back over. I think that it's a funny one with sunk cost fallacy. Like, you don't want to simply recommit to a first round draft pick simply because you paid a lot for him 4 years ago. But I think there's a bit there. And, the biggest question mark is his body. If he gets injured now between the end of the season, he's probably done, if it's a bad injury. But I think there's enough talent there that I'm actually now quietly hoping he gets another contract. Tom Cole, he's played most of the year in this team, to be fair, and still out of contract. But I think I think he's been pretty good recently. And I think, again, mature, established talent. But if it's a choice of Starcevic and Tom Cole, and the cost for Starcevic is not exorbitant, then we upgrade with Starcevic. That's probably a fair conclusion. But I'm not fully committed to the idea that we should cut Tom Cole. Rhett Bazza we have to keep, I would have thought, still out of contract. I think it was reported that he is set to sign with West Coast, so that's a good result. He's not really tearing it up right now at AFL level, but he, a tall defender who has had a real lack of continuity in this team, and he is certainly in a position of need right now, Rhett Bazza, so I would give him another contract. Then you've got Jacob Newton, who is making his debut this Sunday against the Western Bulldogs, which is promising. It's unclear whether they really rate him. He's really earned that debut. It's possible. I think they definitely rate him. Or is this a case of just seeing what he can do before making a decision on signing him on for another year? He's just on a 6-month contract. So, I mean, the best case scenario is he plays really well on Sunday. And he is a rookie anyway. Colin Livingston, it's unclear. And I think the Harry Barnett thing is also connected here. So, to be clear, Colin Livingston's on the rookie list, I think, or the Cat B list. One of the rookie lists. And Harry Barnett is on the main list. Both young rucks playing waffle, neither really pushing a case for AFL at this stage, and Barnett is at least a year older, I reckon, maybe 2 actually. No, he's 1 year older, and he's contracted, but that does not mean that he's guaranteed a spot next year. You can delist players early. We did that with Zach Langdon, so I think West Coast will probably just make a decision on one of them and draft another replacement for the other. That's my expectation. They'll have one preference of Barnett and Livingston. I'd be surprised if both are on the list next year. So, yeah, those are some decisions at least that West Coast have to make. And again, there's so much water to go under the bridge to really speculate on how we go about this. How many list spots do we have? Are we able to facilitate a pick trade? Does Liam Ryan leave? And don't even get me started on Harley Reid and the shitstorm that would create if we traded him. Even if we got several top-end picks for Harley Reid, it would really disrupt some of the plans that I'm loosely forming in my head. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I think it would be a real kick in the guts to this football club. But touch wood, we'll see. So let me know in the comments what you think about everything I've discussed. Is there anything I've missed? There usually is something that I've missed, but it's a broad topic. So I look forward to it. If you want to tune in to True Footy this weekend, we do a live show. We're going to do Adelaide and Collingwood. And yes, I will be watching the Bulldogs and Eagles on Sunday and praying for another surprisingly good performance from the West Coast Eagles. But for now, I'll see you in the next one, guys. Cheers. Up the Eagles. I forgot to say that.